Hey, everybody, welcome to Bitcoin Not Crypto. My name is Forrest Stevens. This is a guest episode. And with me today, I have Gen Z BTC. Say hello, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into Bitcoin, and yeah, we'll go from there.
What's up, everybody? This is Satoshi Guapamoto over at Gen Z BTC. Shout out to Bitcoin Not Crypto. You know, big appreciation for you to having me on, and a little bit about my story, how I got started in Bitcoin. So for me, it started with Wall Street bets, actually. So it was the beginning of the lockdowns, right? So GameStop's going crazy, and crazy enough, I only found out about this because my mom was watching TMZ, right? And they were talking about GameStop. That's how you know that was the local top. Okay, when it's on TMZ, it's time to get out of the trade. And me not knowing anything about trading or investing, I knew nothing. I just got a stimulus check, and I'm like, dude, I'm running this. So I put my entire stimulus check into AMC options. Right? They printed, by the way, but because I was so diluted by the Reddit guys and not understanding investing at all, I never sold. Right? So I actually lost money on that. I never made anything, and because I was thrown into that environment of investing and going for long shots and all this other crazy stuff, I stumbled upon Bitcoin because around that same time, a few weeks later, a few months later, Bitcoin started running. And in the beginning, I was just a trader. Again, I saw the number go up. That's what drew me to it. I bought some. I was working at my $15 an hour job at Target, thinking I was some genius. I was like, look at me, guys. I bought it when it was 10 bands. Now it's all the way up to 60K. And I lost all my money again in Voyager, right? I let someone else hold my keys. I lost my money, and I forgot about Bitcoin for maybe a year and a half. And there was a YouTube video. I'll never forget this by I think his name is Yoni Appelberg. He wrote the book Abundance Through Scarcity. He's like this Swedish dude. He has a YouTube channel. Typically does like those drawing type of YouTube videos, and it was forget the exact title. It might have been called "How Proof of Work Works." How Bitcoin's proof of work system works. And I watched that one night, and it was December of 2022, and I could not sleep afterwards because I was so excited. I was like, "Whoa, what is this?" I really started to discover what Bitcoin was. So that's my long-winded answer of how I got into Bitcoin. Never looked back. Became a true maxi December 2022. And since then, I've been living on a Bitcoin standard.
Oh, wow. Okay. So there's a lot there I want to get into. One thing you mentioned with AMC was you said they printed. So I imagine you mean they diluted their shares, like they created new shares after their stock price jumped up in value. Is that what you meant there?
No, that's a funny way to interpret it because that did happen. But when I use the word printed in that context, I meant like I bought it for 1,000 and it went up to 10,000, 20,000. You know what I mean? Like it printed money for me,
I see. I see. Okay.
you know? But then after that, yes, AMC, they decided, you know what? This is a perfect opportunity to dilute because our company's not doing that good. This is free money. This is literally free money that these guys are giving us. It's time to sell shares. It's time to dilute shares.
Yeah, that's literally their what is it? Their duty to their shareholders, right? Is like this is a way of us raising capital and potentially, staving off bankruptcy. For me, that was kind of an interesting moment in my learning about Bitcoin and the scarcity, like the true limited supply. I was like, I'm removing that third party risk of owning securities where they can literally dilute me. I was looking into all these tech stocks when I was starting to get into investing and just looking at this shareholder compensation that happens with literally new shares. And I'm like, well, is that all factored into the price? Like, and then learning about Bitcoin, I'm like, oh, they literally can't do this. Like there's programmed issuance, and that's how much more Bitcoin there is, and you can easily factor that in compared to this unknown variable of new shares. So yeah, just it's totally different game than investing in securities with Bitcoin, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Bitcoin, there's no counterparty risk. The risk is yourself, because you might lose your keys. Like the risk for me was leaving it on Voyager. Like, really, that was my fault. Even though they were the ones doing a bunch of weird stuff and, going through whatever, I trusted them. You know what I mean? And that was the problem. There's too many layers of trust involved. And that's because I didn't really understand what I owned.
Yeah, and I think you're not alone there. There's a lot of pain points for people getting into this space, a lot of mistakes you can make, and the importance of self custody. I mean, there is a lot of people talking about that, and you kind of see it, but you're like, oh well, they mean people that have like 100,000 or 200 or like a million, like whatever. I'll just leave a little bit here and a little bit there, and you don't think it's a big deal, but then there's a run up, and that money does become significant, right? That you have in there.
Yeah, like you got to think in, especially if you're a newer person. Let's say if you're listening to this and you do not self custody, think about it this way: you having 10% of a Bitcoin, which is a huge amount, by the way, you have 10 million satoshis. Okay, so don't frame it in dollars like, oh, bro, it's only like $9,000. No, 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 no. You have 10 million Bitcoins, technically. You know what I mean? You have 10 million pieces of a Bitcoin. You have 10 million satoshis. And if you feel safe leaving 10 million of something with some other custodian, right? Then okay, well then that's good for you. I truly do hope that it works out. I really hope that they don't lose your keys because that's going to be really bad for you. And I had to find that out the hard way. But the problem was I never knew. You know what I mean? So I think it's important for like more and more podcasts and YouTube videos and tweets and Twitter Spaces to keep going live, where maybe it just makes someone take a step to self custody at least some of their coins. Maybe you do half and half, right? That's still something.
It's definitely something to learn about, something to consider, I would say. And yeah, it's super important. I mean, for me, that's another reason why I like it, is that I can actually own it. Like, yeah, I mean, it's stored on the blockchain, but I'm the one that owns the private keys to be able to ever move it or to use it in any way. So it's like you actually truly own something with Bitcoin, which I really like. If you're interested in getting some self custodial Bitcoin, the best way to do that, in my opinion, is through the Bitcoin Well. They're available in Canada and the United States. They have a very low spread, no fees, and they allow for Lightning or on chain Bitcoin transactions. And those go directly into your wallets. They never hold your Bitcoin for you, so it doesn't open you up to exchange party risk, which is amazing. They also have a 0% fee swap function between Lightning and Bitcoin. And if you use my referral link, you can sign up and get some free Bitcoin, which is really cool. And they have non-custodial ways of buying Bitcoin as well. If that's something that interests you, check out the link in the description. And now back to the episode. Another thing you mentioned there, you had Saylor says this, right? There's an interview where he says like you have to have a need to know before you can learn about Bitcoin, and it's like you got that stimulus check, and you're like, okay, well, I got this money here. It's like, what I need to do something with this. And for me, the my Bitcoin moment happened. I mean, I knew about it like before this, but like my real going in deep into Bitcoin happened after I sold my house. And like, it's the fiat games where like real estate goes up. I'm in Canada where real estate really goes up. And it's like, okay, I got all this fiat now. Like, I need to invest this. And then, I went down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin, but it was only because I came into some money that like Bitcoin uh, came into my life, right? And it's kind of similar, I feel like, your story with getting that stimulus check.
I was definitely just, I wasn't in a tough position, living with in my mom's basement, you know what I'm saying? I got some free money and I'm like, "Oh, you know what? Let me see if I can make money into more money." Cuz again, I was just now discovering investing back in that time, and I've come quite a long way, at least in my opinion, since then. And in terms of a need to know, um in that moment, honestly, I did not have a need to know because I didn't understand Bitcoin. I just had a need for more fiat. You know, my need to know emerged around 2022 when I started going down the rabbit hole to become like a real maxi. And my need to know, in my opinion, my need to know is how do I not work for my entire life? You know what I mean? Like that's my need to know. Because I'm thinking, okay, well, Gen Zers, and that's why I'm Gen Z BTC, because the thing with Gen Z is we are facing the brunt of mass inflation more than any other generation, because it compounds. So then you have to think, okay, well, most people, they're trying to retire around 65, 66, 67. The retirement age keeps getting pushed back because one, no one has enough money to retire, and two, no one's saving enough, and because they think, oh well, I have $200,000, I can retire. Like people actually think that in real life, which is insane. So I'm thinking, bro, I'm 20 something. I'm going to be working until I'm 80. That's insane. So my need to know is to avoid that future for myself in any way that I can. That's increasing my human capital, right? Increasing my earnings and also being able to save in something that actually maintains its value as we go into the future, and that's the biggest thing about Bitcoin. I don't mean to ramble on, but like the big problem with Bitcoin is people don't understand why it exists because they don't understand the problem that it solves. And the problem is when you hold dollars under your mattress for 20 years, 30 years, you're actually losing money. But they think, well, no, all my dollars are still there, bro. What do you mean? No one's taking my dollars. They're under my mattress. You have to understand the purchasing power is being stolen. So it's that's my need to know for sure.
No, I love that clarification. I really that's very insightful hearing that because you identified basically the money's broken, right? And it's true, and people have this um we have this bias to just like look at numbers and think that numbers are kind of fixed, right? Like, oh, I have 200,000, that's 200,000. Like, yeah, things go up and like, people see inflation, but they just kind of think, oh, it gets a little more expensive. I just got to save a little bit more, or like, I got to work extra hard, or hopefully I get a raise. But it's like, they don't really think, like, oh, that's actually like a real problem. And it's not, you can't, I don't know, like, it, yeah, people just get kind of stuck on, like, even in investing in fiat world, investing in stocks, like, you go up in value, you're like, oh, I've made all this money, but then we never actually value that in uh taking into account the debasement of the currency. I think it's like a huge mind shift to start thinking about things in Bitcoin term instead of fiat numbers. I think it's a huge difference.
Yeah. And when people go on websites like I believe it's called Priced in Bitcoin 21, amazing website. If everyone on earth could see that at one time, I think they would have a shift in the way that they view Bitcoin because the price of everything is crashing against Bitcoin, right? And when we think of the word crashing, we see red numbers, we think, oh no, that's bad, that's bad. When you're living on a Bitcoin standard, that's really good, right? So, easy example, a house 10 years ago might have cost you 600 Bitcoin. Imagine having just one Bitcoin today. Obviously, people are like, dude, that's too expensive. I can't have one. Imagine needing 600 to buy a house. Then we go 5 years into the future, right? Then you only need 60 Bitcoin to buy a house. And then you go 5 more years to the present. Now you only need six. What happens in 5 more years? Okay, 20, 2029, right? And now the price of a house is point 0.6. You know what I mean? Like that is a paradigm shift. Your life is getting cheaper. You're saving money just by holding money. You know what I mean? That is completely different than anything else in the world. Nothing else does that.
And it's pretty rapid too. Like, people have this small kind of time frame where they look at it in months and weeks and they say, "Oh, it's gone up, even in this month, right? It's gone up 40%. That's insane." And then when it crashes 40% or 30%, they think, "Oh, whoa, that's crazy." It's like but of course, people say there's kind of that meme, like, when in doubt, zoom out. And it's like, if you zoom out on Bitcoin's chart and its price and its value, it's just wild how quick this is actually happening in the grand scheme of assets, right? Like, how old is gold? And gold is worth a ton, but Bitcoin is starting to eat into that worth. That money has got to come from somewhere. And yeah, a lot of that money is being printed, but a lot of that money is moving out of bonds and real estate and gold. Like, it is happening because that money is going into Bitcoin and it's coming from somewhere, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like if you like think of it this way, it is so rare to be alive when a new money is invented. Like really think about how crazy that is. They used bushels of wheat, tobacco, cattle. That's really barter. It's not really money, but you know what I mean. And then they discover silver, right? There has to be someone at some point in some time that discovered zinc or whatever metal, copper. And they're like, dude, this stuff is really good. Okay. It doesn't rot, it doesn't rust as easy. We can use this as money. Then someone discovers silver. Like they don't discover all these things all at once, and it takes thousands of years for people to realize, okay, wait, silver is better than bronze. 1,000 more years later, okay, gold is better than silver and bronze. Okay, 5,000 years later, okay, Bitcoin's better than gold, silver, and bronze. So I mean, we are truly very lucky, to be around during the emergence of new money. Even being alive during the printing press. Like, if you were alive when they invented that, that's crazy. Like, you were alive to witness new money. It's very rare.
Yeah, like you said, we're incredibly lucky to be around right now and tuned into this too, because there's a lot of people that just aren't, right? But this isn't an original thought, but it's one that I enjoy, which is just that like fiat is a little in between thing. It's like a little blip in our use of money. It's like we had gold, we had silver, and in between that, we had this little thing of fiat, which is where we're currently living in, and then there was Bitcoin, and Bitcoin replaced all of that, you know. And it's fiat is just like this little kind of bridge where it was like, yeah, gold is pretty tough to move around, so let's use these notes that are, you know, denominated in gold, and then it just became notes that were, you know, backed by the government. And then yeah, it's just like it's this tiny little blip in history, and we're currently living in
Yeah, it's a tiny little mistake in history, but all
it.
good. We can fix it, guys. We can fix it.
Yes, totally. So, okay, so you mentioned also that you're on the Bitcoin standard. I do want to get to that, but I am curious a little bit in your journey to becoming a Bitcoin maximalist. That isn't always the smoothest path for people. Was there some altcoining around there? And what do you think about altcoins? What is your like? How did you become a Bitcoin maxi?
Yeah, and I should not even be saying this, okay? Do not try to copy this. But Imma be honest, I was very much into, altcoins and all that other stuff before December of 2022, and during that time, I had placed some pretty good buys, right? I was buying a lot of alts pretty much towards the bottom, and as you know, Bitcoin started to run January 2023, going into 2024. It's been running for a little bit now, right? Some of that was on the coattails of the ETF. There was just the end of the bear market. A lot of stuff was culminating, right? And I was just slowly cycling all of my altcoins out and getting them into Bitcoin. I was using like crypto.com and all that. And my alts priced in Bitcoin, I got really lucky, honestly. Like I bought them pretty much at the bottom. So I was very happy with that. But it was so freeing to get everything off of crypto.com and then put all my stuff onto a hardware wallet. And when I first transferred them, I was scared. You know what I mean? Because I was like, okay, let me do a baby transaction. I think everyone's felt this way.
Oh
You
yeah.
do a baby transaction first to make sure you did it right, and then you move the whole thing, and you're sitting there just watching the blocks. I'm on mempool, looking like a crack addict. I'm like shaking. You know what I mean? I'm like, where's my transaction, bro? And then my money pops up. I'm like, thank God. You know, it was crazy. But yeah, yeah, I was definitely trying to catch waves, you know? Again, Wall Street Bets kid, that's how I got into it. I was like, "Oh, maybe Tesla is gonna do this. Maybe Chewy is gonna do this. Ryan Cohen, he's the CEO of GameStop. Maybe he's gonna do this." Like, I did not know what was going on. And sometimes you just get caught in that little echo chamber, and sometimes I feel that way with Bitcoin. But the way I got into Bitcoin so heavily was I started looking up how could Bitcoin fail. I did that every day for like a month, and, that helped to solidify my conviction.
Yeah, I mean, that was really well put in a simplified way of just the more you learn about Bitcoin, like you know, you were specifically looking up how could it fail, but the more you learn about money, money systems, Bitcoin, all the surrounding parts about Bitcoin, the more conviction it just naturally will create if if you're actually taking in that information. Like that's why I find altcoins and cryptocurrency like you know, the general industry or whatever, like really hard to comprehend because I'm just like, a lot of these people are like, okay, you got to ride up the cycle and you got to take profits. Like, you know, you got to buy in at the right time and take profits. And I'm just like, take profits. Like, that idea just doesn't make sense to me anymore. Like, what does that mean? Like, so you have no conviction in what it is if you're taking profits into like US dollars or something like and I guess maybe there's other people will say like there's utility to these other coins, you can do smart contracts or DeFi or something, and to me it's just like, well, none of that is as valuable as being a base layer money. Like once you learn how important money is in the world, it's like if Bitcoin has a chance of being like true base layer money, that's incredibly valuable, and that makes the Bitcoin that people hold incredibly valuable because everybody will want to be using that network. And that to just me just that just beats any other value proposition that any of these other coins have, right?
Yeah, like Sailor says, it literally half of everything. You know, being able to denominate the world, being the measuring stick of value is half of everything. When it comes to altcoins, there might be a lot of utility that some of these might have, but all that utility can be built on top of or integrated into Bitcoin. Um, Another issue, again, it's just the fact that it's counterparty. You could get rugged. The CEOs of the coin can get jailed. You know, maybe illegally, maybe illegally. You know, what I mean, it might not be fair. A lot of things can happen. So Bitcoin's that risk-free rate of return. And when you say something so crazy about a volatile asset, what do you mean Bitcoin's risk-free? It's risk-free. Um, you got to get a little bit deeper into it. It's hard to explain it all here, but throughout the course of this conversation, you'll hopefully start to piece together a few of the reasons why Bitcoin is minimized risk. It's extremely minimized risk, especially in a cryptocurrency space.
Yeah, well, there's too many people that still think that just that volatility equals risk. And it really only does if you're needing to exchange it for something else day to day. And that volatility in Bitcoin, in my opinion, will get worked out. But right now it's clearly not risky because if you can hold it for 4 years, you're up, right? So it's really just your time frame. You said that Bitcoin is the way you look at it now is like your risk-free rate of return. um this is incredibly interesting to me, and it's also how I look at it. And I posted a tweet not that long ago that basically said something along the lines of well, in Wall Street, everybody compares their investments to the S&P 500. And I really think the new base layer of what you're competing against should be the returns of Bitcoin. Like, and this is kind of gets into how the only investments that I look at besides Bitcoin are companies that somehow work within Bitcoin. They accumulate Bitcoin. Microstrategy miners do this other as well. There's all sorts of different companies now doing this, but they denominate even their yield in Bitcoin, right? And this is something that I think will continue to be more and more commonplace because to me, Apple really isn't that valuable because they have no Bitcoin. And like Bitcoin to me is money. So they have tons of this cash and it's just losing its purchasing power constantly. And even its future cash flows are denominated in dollars. And it's like, unless they make that switch to Bitcoin, they don't have anything that I really value. So to me, we need to start denominating our returns in Bitcoin, and that's the new benchmark, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, and that's 100% correct. That's really what I mean by the risk-free rate of return. Like, so in the status quo, if you're not beating the S&P 500, then you're losing. Like, you're literally losing money every single day, right? Because the S&P 500 is pretty much the risk-free rate of return, all things considered, right? When you factor in inflation as well, right? Let's say inflation is 27, okay, maybe not 27, but inflation's like 7%, right? The S&P 500 goes up 20%. Really, you made 13%. All right. So trying to beat 13%, that's what you have to do in the current system. With Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin, the hurdle rate, as it's called, is much higher because you have to try to beat 60%, 70% a year, which is very difficult. So companies have to, one, become hyper efficient, and two, they have to use Bitcoin as their base layer. All right. So Bitcoin is like the ocean, it's the water, right? And all these companies are ships. All the other companies that hold no Bitcoin have holes in them. They're leaking. Okay. They're sinking. All the companies that have Bitcoin as the treasury reserve asset are literally floating. They are guaranteed to tread water because the rising tide of Bitcoin raises all of them up. So if you're using that as your baseline, at the worst, your company is going to appreciate at 60, 70%. The value you add on top of that is what your company is generating. That's the yield MicroStrategy is generating. That's the yield Similar Scientific is generating. That's the yield Mara is generating, you know?
Yeah, it's their ability to accumulate more of that asset. Yeah, that's a great analogy of the ships with the taking on water. That's incredible. So yeah, I just wanted to get some more of your opinion on MicroStrategy. Um, It's kind of the topic du jour on Bitcoin right now. MicroStrategy, what they're doing with their financial instruments, creating converts and issuing shares when they have an MNAV, a multiple to their net asset value, and being able to just turn around and smash buy Bitcoin. I mean, a lot of people are seeing this. A lot of people are comparing it to, I mean, I see people comparing it to a pyramid scheme. I see people comparing it to a Ponzi
You
scheme.
know,
I
Enron.
see, yeah, those the brothers that bought all the silver market and then were trying to sell it and they had nowhere to sell it. I can't remember their name, but there's just and I think a lot of this comes from that same idea of what you were talking about, where you have to that Bitcoin isn't an intelligence thing; it's more of like an ego thing. And I think a lot of our ego is built up from what we learn, right? And there's a lot of in the past there has been a lot of financial scams, right? There has been Ponzi schemes, there has been financial trickery in the markets, and people just see that and they think, okay, well, I don't understand this, what MicroStrategy is doing, so it must be this other thing that I do understand or that I have heard about, and because it's just slightly resembles it in some way because I haven't learned enough about it, basically.
Yeah, and I'm pretty deep into MSTR. Honestly, that's what blew my account up so much. So let's go through some of what's going on. All right, here's the easy breakdown. Michael Saylor takes the fake money. That's called US dollars. You take fake money and then you buy real money with it. Then what happens is the real money generates more fake money that you can then use to buy more real money. That is the easy way. Okay. Now, if we get a little bit more complicated, he's actually doing some financial engineering like we have literally never seen before. This guy is our Warren Buffett, you know what I mean? And if we're being honest, he's truly greater than Warren Buffett himself. And time will tell if that's really true, but I'm making the prediction now. He is literally a greater trader than George Soros. He's a greater trader than Warren Buffett. This is the greatest trade of all time. So you could see this as a speculative attack on the dollar. Okay. He'll never say that. Right. But that's pretty much what's happening. What's a speculative attack? That's when you borrow a weaker currency, right? You invest in the stronger currency. And then as the weaker currency gets inflated away, your debt is shrinking while your gains in the strong currency are actually building. That's how George Soros got rich. So MicroStrategy has the ability to do like this triple arbitrage thing where they are selling or getting money from the fixed income markets, right? What people don't understand is like there are more than just me and you, like retail traders who are essentially, we're brokies considering that there are so many trillion dollar, multi-billion dollar, like insurance companies, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds. They have all this money, but they cannot buy stocks and they cannot buy commodities like Bitcoin. So what do? They buy bonds, they buy treasuries. They're forced to do this. Like they are legally obligated to do so. MicroStrategy is offering them a form of a Bitcoin bond, like a MicroStrategy bond, right? They're buying billions of dollars of this because they can't buy anything else. They get to arbitrage that by shorting the stock and doing all this other crazy stuff. We don't need to get into the weeds of it, but basically they gain money from doing this. Then they can also raise debt or use debt by selling shares. Go back to the AMC thing. The problem with AMC was they were making shares, dumping them on retail, and propping up the company with it. And the retail holders like me, we were getting destroyed. We were getting cooked. Okay. But with MicroStrategy, he's selling shares to buy something more valuable, which is Bitcoin. The Bitcoin is worth more than his shares, and the Bitcoin appreciates over time. So you're using fake money, which is shares, right? Which you could turn into fiat to buy Bitcoin, which then is the water, again, the rising tide that lifts up the boat. Like he is turning a couple wooden planks on water into Noah's Ark in real time. You know what I mean? Like he's like generating this boat on this water on this ocean while everyone else is sinking. And they're like, what is happening? How is this guy beating us? How is this dork beating us? Who is this kid? The Microsoft guys are like, he's completely outperforming us, and it's ridiculous to witness this in real time.
Oh yeah, yeah. Microsoft is getting smashed compared to MicroStrategy. It's crazy, but yeah, it's almost like public companies kind of have their own money printer as long as the market is willing to accept these new shares, as long as there's buyers, and it applies selling pressure, right, to in the market, but MicroStrategy's like the eighth most traded company in the world right now. So there's a huge amount of trading and volume happening constantly. So there's that market that they can sell into without destroying their stock price. And yeah, they take that money, that fiat, like you said, and they're buying the strongest, most sound asset. And I think what's very interesting as well is by being shareholders, you're basically like incentivizing or allowing or putting your capital to the use of this strategy, right? Like you're like MicroStrategy is then able to take the buying pressure that you've applied as a buyer of shares and implement these strategies. And it's like you're kind of funding them going to buy more Bitcoin, which is really cool as well. And I also think that like they have 400,000 Bitcoin at this point, and we really don't. It's really hard to predict how useful that's going to be in the future, but I think it's going to be incredibly useful. Like Bitcoin today is incredibly useful. It's the most pristine capital, and it's starting to get more adoption by all of these other institutions, right? The ETF was huge. All these things are like all, Wall Street's really coming into Bitcoin. It's like Bitcoin is going to become more and more useful into the future, and MicroStrategy has a ton of it. So it's really hard to value, and equities are always forward looking, and I think that's why there's such a premium to MicroStrategy's share compared to its net asset value. Is like the amount of Bitcoin it has in the future will they'll be able to do quite a lot with that Bitcoin, I think.
Yeah. And like the premium is extremely low, by the way. This is not just like bullish moon boy talk. All right, let's like think for like a few seconds. El Salvador is a country. It's probably going to be one of the greatest countries in the world. They have less than 10,000 bitcoins. Like let that sink in. That's insane, and they've been buying every single day for years at this point. MicroStrategy is a company. They have more than the entire United States. So if this becomes the base layer of money, which is logical, right? Because the world needs something that is neutral, that cannot be debased, and that can be settled very quickly over large distances. That was the real problem with gold. Um, so this is improved gold, and one company has more than the entire country of the United States. I don't know exactly what that means for the future, but if I had to guess, that would mean that MicroStrategy should probably be worth more than $100 billion. You know what I mean? That's just my take.
I also agree. I think the valuation is low too. But I think, I mean, the reason I said it was high is because a lot of people do think it's high
Yes. No,
currently.
I understand. 100%.
But yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I wanted to get your take on one point about MicroStrategy. The I think the biggest like conspiratorial take of MicroStrategy that I plan to make a video on soon is that MicroStrategy is the United States future strategic Bitcoin reserve. That basically the government has privatized a lot of the things that they do. Um, we can look at examples. For instance, I mean, the government has been caught spying on their people as well, the United States, but they also spy on their people through private corporations, through Google and through Facebook. They just do it privately. So what do you think? Have you heard about this idea that MicroStrategy will be the United States strategic Bitcoin reserve? And do you have any thoughts on that?
I have not heard that, but that's actually very interesting. And I'm going to be honest, anything is possible. These guys will literally do anything in order to try to maintain their power or get whatever they need, right? That's very interesting. I would say, obviously, Michael Saylor would not go for that. He'd be like, "Are you insane?" No. But to be fair, I'm not sure if he would have a choice if the people come knocking on his door, and they're like, "Hey, sorry, little bro, your Bitcoin belongs to us now." Real tragedy. Sorry about that. So I really hope that doesn't happen. But I can definitely see what you're talking about there. Yeah, Palantir has been privatized essentially. A lot of these Lockheed Martin, you know what I mean? Like all these guys are privatized. They're part of the military industrial complex. So perhaps we'll create a Bitcoin industrial complex where they're like, "Oh, yes, MicroStrategy, we're gonna use you guys to financially engineer a bunch of debt to buy all the Bitcoin so that we don't have to, or we don't have to sell our gold, or we don't have to pass a bill to do it, or whatever." You know?
Exactly. Yeah, whatever
Interesting.
that ends up looking like, it'll just be a private arm of the public government, right?
That's very interesting. Yeah.
It's an interesting idea, and like you said, Sailor wouldn't go for it, but I think that realistically, I mean, I think the possibility of that is low, but I do see that as the biggest risk of MicroStrategy, and that in there is the risk of basically allowing a third party to be your Bitcoin, right? We all want MicroStrategy shares because we believe in the underlying idea, which is Bitcoin. And but the Bitcoin they hold is held by Fidelity, it's held by Coinbase, it's held by not even them, which there's whatever, but and then it's also not redeemable like by owning the shares. So to me it's like MicroStrategy, it's so funny, there's that Sailor quote, like there is no second best. To me MicroStrategy is that second best.
Yeah,
And i
ironically.
look at my I look at my portfolio and I say, oh, I see that I have these out of the money calls on MicroStrategy that are up 200, 300%, and I'm like, well, it looks like the number one to me because it's outperformed my Bitcoin, but I still value my cold storage Bitcoin in a hardware wallet way more than that MicroStrategy, even with those percentage gains, right? So,
Yeah, like, another way, again, just a way of looking at it. There's always been the 60-40 portfolio, right? 60% stocks, 40% bonds, right? If you do that, you're going to literally, most likely, you're gonna be poor for the rest of your life. I just want you to know, like, it's not great, bro. You're literally losing money daily. But what we can do now, the new 60-40 is 60% BTC, 40% MSTR. That's the new 60-40.
I like
You
it.
know what I mean? And because Bitcoin is for saving and the 40% I'm investing. MicroStrategy is my investment. Why is it an investment? Because I'm taking on risk. At the end of the day, we're not going to sit here and pretend like MicroStrategy is the risk-free rate of return, because it's not. There is a risk. Sailor could be illegally arrested for security fraud tomorrow. You know what I mean? And it might not even be true, but hey, he's arrested for security fraud. It's over. Stock's down 35%. People are panicking. They're crying. No one knows what's going on. They can't get any more Sailor tweets, okay? Because he's the figurehead. So that's not good. That could happen in real life. And you don't want that to happen. That's a very big risk. There is no, oh my God, they arrested the CEO of Bitcoin. No, they arrested Satoshi. So that's why we say Bitcoin has no counterparty risk. That's why it's the risk free rate. So when you buy MicroStrategy, what you're trying to do, at least what you should be trying to do, you're trying to get more Bitcoin, right? Because the shares go up faster. That's what the yield is. You're getting more fiat so quickly that you're actually gaining Bitcoin in fiat terms. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I think that there should be a little bit of a split. That's 100% true for options. Options, you literally cannot hold them into, forever. You have to get rid of them for fiat. You have to, you know. And that fiat gain is so big, you actually have more Bitcoin now. You know what I mean?
I completely agree. Yeah, MicroStrategy is investing, and investing has inherent risk, and investing is not right for everybody. Like these options I've bought, and even the shares, like I tried to time it and all this kind of stuff. Like not everybody is should be doing that. Like that isn't right for everybody.
Bro, little quick story. I was literally working at, and I've never made more than $32,000 in my life. Like that's been my yearly, like for my whole life, which is really sad actually. But anyway, enough of my sob story. I was working in this crazy tweaker warehouse, crazy, crazy people in there. I mean, people hitting the weed pen in the bathroom and just like crazy stuff. A lot of OSHA violations. Okay. I'm sitting in there and MicroStrategy does the 10 for 1 split. And I'm like, okay, this is perfect. I can finally afford to buy some options. I buy them the first day. I've been saving up because I knew this day was coming. I was saving up. I buy them. And then over that week, of course, red days. And I'm looking at my net worth go down the toilet. And I'm thinking, dude, am I actually this stupid? Like, oh my God, I'm going to work here for the rest of my life. Please just kill me now. Oh my God. But obviously, when you have an understanding of what's going on in the market, you don't lose your conviction that easily. There's going to be days where you're like, dang, I am actually retarded. This is insane. Why did I do this? I hate myself. But if you are built for that volatility, then you're going to love investing, right? Because you start with a small nest egg. I used to like feel so bad on days when I was down 500 or $1,000. I'm like, dude, I'm never financially recovering from this. But now, at the end of the day, it's not a big deal, because you just come so far. And this is me speaking to anyone. If you're doing $20 a day, that's a lot. If you can save $20 a day, that's amazing. So I say go for it, man. Do never feel bad about your stack, because you might sit there and be like, "Oh, it's so small, it's so small. I'll never be able to afford a Bitcoin. I'll never be able to do this, do that." Do not doubt yourself. You might come a lot further than you might think. So start small, keep going, don't stop.
Yeah, it's funny. I I'm in the irresponsibly long group on Twitter, and it's like
Yes.
but some days, like I end up looking at the price of MicroStrategy later, and it's like down 2%, and people are losing their minds in that group, and I'm like, what's going on here? Like, MicroStrategy must be tanking. I go look at the price; it's barely moved. Like,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
must
I'll
just be
tell you what's going on.
leveraged, like
Yeah, yeah.
MSTU with options on that. I'm just like, what the like?
They
Okay,
bought weeklies,
yeah,
okay?
yeah.
They bought weeklies, and now they're like, "Why is this happening?" Bro, you gotta really have a long time preference. That's another thing. Too much TikTok, too much YouTube Shorts. Everything's now, now, now. Everything's dopamine. Bro, please zoom out. Think about your future. And by future, I don't mean tomorrow. Like, think about if you're lucky enough to live for the next 4 years. Think about that. Think about how different your life will be if you're able to save. This is an amazing quote. This is not my quote, but investing is life insurance in the case that you live. You know what I mean? Like, in the case that you happen to survive and make it to the future, investing was your life insurance. Congratulations.
No, that's great.
You
That's
know,
perfect, man.
you get to collect once you make it. Every day we take a step forward in the future. We have 1,000 days in front of us in order to get to 3 years in the future. If you can take 1,000 steps and make it to day 1,000, your life insurance will be there waiting for you. That's your investments. You made it. Congrats.
Yeah. Another thing you said, which was interesting to me, is like $20 a day is a lot. And I think a lot of people still don't know. Like, a lot of people that aren't into Bitcoin, they don't know that you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. You just buy 20 bucks worth. Like, you can buy it, it fractions down to 100 millionth of a Bitcoin. And one Satoshi is less than a penny. Like, it's, I don't even know, it's like 10 Satoshis a penny, basically, or
Something like
something like
that.
that.
I think if you buy $1, you get 1,000 sats.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And so, like, that's awesome. Just do that. Like, just get into it, get off zero. There's all these memes, like, just do that, right? Get off zero. Um, Start learning, start studying. I used to tell people to buy Bitcoin, like my brother and people in my family. Now I'm like, they ask me about it, and I'm like, they ask me like, "Oh, should I buy or should I wait or whatever?" I'm like, I think you should learn. I think you should just start learning. I just tell them, study Bitcoin, because the more you know, the more you'll realize, why do I have any of this fiat? Like, right now, it's like I have to make sure that I have enough money in my bank account uh to pay rent, and I just like balance that, and then everything else is in Bitcoin. Like, literally everything. Like, I look so poor when I look at my bank account, but then I look at my hardware wallet and I'm feeling all right. Yeah. So,
Love that.
and that
Love that.
that comes back to, you mentioned, kind of, you're on the Bitcoin standard. I'd like to hear about how you navigate that. How does that work for you?
Yeah, for sure. For me, and shout out to Brian Harrington. He's the guy who popularized the get to 0.21 Bitcoin. And the reason Brian helped me out is because he had this idea on his channel. This video has no views, by the way. All his other videos have a lot of views. This one has like 500. It's a diamond in the rough. He's talking about how he utilizes credit cards in order to balance a lot of his daily purchasing, and he keeps his Bitcoin stack extremely big by doing this. And I copied that method. So what I like to try to do is I try to keep my net worth around, at least in fiat terms. So my net worth is like zero. And the way that I do that is, let's say I have $1,000 in my checking, and then I have my credit cards. I try to make sure that my credit card balance is never more than what's in my checking, right? And I try to keep my checking always at a baseline of like 1,000, right? So if I have $1,000 on my credit cards, which mine have zero interest, so it's fine. But once that zero interest goes away, maybe I'll get rid of my credit card debt. But I try to keep a certain baseline, like I'm never like underwater. You know what I mean? Like my credit cards is never more than my checking. So my checking is always bigger than my credit cards. So my net worth is zero. But everything on top of 1,000 that I ever get, if I get a check for 1,200 on top of my 1,000, the 1,200 goes away. You know, because it doesn't need to be sitting in the bank account. That's like a waste of money. Like I'm literally, that's called opportunity cost. So the opportunity cost of my $1,200 is massive over time because I could have bought Bitcoin with that. So then I immediately put that into Bitcoin. Bitcoin is my savings account, right? So we have a checking, we have credit cards, then we have a savings account. Bitcoin's a savings account. Then I have my investing account. My investing account is my MicroStrategy, right? So that's how I split up some of my savings, at least for me personally. And this is not me bragging. I still live in my mom's basement, but I have a much bigger net worth than all the other people my age by like a lot because I've been doing this for for an amount of time. I've never made more than $20 an hour. I still don't. I still don't. Like you have to understand, this is crazy. Some days on a really green day, I'm at work and I can't focus. So I'm like, why am I here? And, people will hear that, like, "Oh, well, this guy, he's so lucky." So, yeah, I'm really lucky that I, stumbled upon Bitcoin. That actually is luck. It's just coincidence. But everything that happens past that is not luck. Like, me reading Broken Money, The Creature from Jekyll Island, the Bitcoin, and the Fiat Standard, that's not luck. Like, I'm doing research. Like, me being on podcasts, making my own YouTube channel, I'm reading papers from the central banks themselves, anti-Bitcoin papers. It's not luck, like, I have to actually do work, and that's proof of work. So it's all connected.
Yeah, no, for sure. You're taking action, right? Like there's yeah, there's luck, and then there's taking action, which is that studying, that buying, yeah, taking risks. Like you've decided to do something because you've learned about it, but yeah, that's like commendable. It is something you are doing something. It is true. So, you mentioned your YouTube channel there. I'm curious. You've gotten into this bit into Bitcoin, learning about it. Why do you feel like you want to share stuff about Bitcoin?
This is true for everyone, by the way. Please listen to this. If anyone's ever telling you about Bitcoin, that means they really like you, okay? That means they actually care about you a lot. And, I'm not trying to seem too hippie, but on a day when I'm feeling really good and really happy and like my best self, the truth is I feel an obligation to all people who are born on earth to try to help them, to lead them towards something that is, it's like Bitcoin is hope. Let's put it in a sentence. Bitcoin is hope. And I think we live in a world that is very hopeless. You know what I mean? And how can you really blame them? You know what I mean? Sometimes I think back, like, what was I doing before Bitcoin? I can't even remember. You know what I mean? Then I look around my house and I'm like, oh, that's what I was doing. Oh, I was buying fake designer. Like, wow, oh my god. You know what I mean? And that's what we get caught up in. We get caught up in trying to impress the Joneses, right? Keeping up with the Joneses. We get caught up in all this other stuff. So I think Bitcoin is a way to free people from their shackles that they might not even realize that they're in. Like you don't have to be a victim. You know what I mean? Some people are stuck in a victim mentality. Okay, you watch a little bit too much mainstream media, like turn it off. Okay. You are caught up in too much social media drama, BS, celebrity garbage. Turn it off. Okay. You're caught up trying to keep up with people who you don't even like, by the way. Turn it off. Like, let's focus on something that we can do to benefit ourselves and preserve our future, right? Because right now our future's been stolen. The future is gone. Like, if you're Gen Z or Gen Alpha, the future is gone. It is gone. It's over. You might think, no, 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 it's not over. I'm sorry. It is over. If you look at the interest rate on the debt, it's over $1 trillion per year. That's more than the military. That will continue to compound. It's over. Like Elon Musk and Doge cannot stop that. Donald Trump can't stop that. You know, Trump's going to make it worse. And I'm not like anti Trump. He has to do that. Like he's literally forced to do that. He's forced to print money. Look at like George Bush, Obama, Biden, Trump, everyone. Look at the chart. They've all printed money because they have to. You know what I mean? Like there is no choice for them. Maybe they want to stop it too. Maybe deep down they do want to stop it. They cannot. The only thing that can give us a little bit of hope to change this system where we have so much fake money, so much credit, so much debt is to get into a new system that is not based on debt. It's not based on credit. It's based on equity. It's based on value. You actually put in work and use value to produce bitcoins. That's the paradigm shift. It costs nothing to make dollars. It costs a lot to produce bitcoins.
Well, what's really interesting about the debt spiral that the US is in, and every country basically, is when currencies fail, th- they just make a new one because us as people, we need a currency. Like money is such a tool that, like, okay, we don't value this old currency, but you've given us a new one. Let's just trust it because I need something. Like I need this tool, right? Like, so when currencies have failed in the past or in different nations, they just adopt a different currency, but they still have the same exact underlying problem. They just haven't gotten to the debt levels that the one that failed has gotten to. And Bitcoin is truly the first real way of getting out of that. Like we see the debt spiral coming, we see the collapse of currencies coming. We can just get out of that a little bit earlier and just start adopting it now. That's the way I see it. Like I don't want to have to adopt Bitcoin when I have to adopt Bitcoin. Like we benefit from being early adopters. And yeah, like, and like you said, the debt is totally unmanageable. You can't grow your way out of something like this. And the interest on the debt, like they're paying it by printing more debt. And that's
Your
there's
credit card to pay off your last credit card to pay off your last credit card.
Yeah, or basically getting a new investor to pay old investors.
Hmm. Sounds like a a triangular shaped scheme. What is that
Exactly.
called? You know?
Exactly, exactly. Which is really funny. That kind of comes back to the MicroStrategy thing. That's what people are calling MicroStrategy, but it's like he's just found that the system we're currently in is pyramid scheme, right? And he's just, you know, using that against itself, basically. Um, I think you're right though. Like, that's the reason that I started my YouTube channel as well, is just to help people. Like, and it's the reason I'm the most passionate of when I talk to my friends, my family, is because I care about them more than I care about, strangers. I try to, love people equally or whatever, but it's like, these are people I know, and I really try to get to them, like, how whatever their interest is, I try to use that to, like, be like, well, if you're in, want to help the environment, it's like, well, look at what Bitcoin mining can do. It helps with, balancing grids and funding renewable energy. And then it's like, well, you don't like inflation. Well, let me tell you how inflation starts and how this can be a way to opt out of it. So
I did that at a party, the whole inflation story thing, like, don't ask me how it came up, but, like, I literally have a circle of people around me, and I'm like, "Okay, let's start here. They used to use seashells," and I go on this crazy rant, but the thing is, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but, like, when you're trying to get people to understand Bitcoin, it's really great to meet them where they're at. So if you can find what their values are, like I value humanitarianism, I value the environment, I value being able to help refugees, I value being able to send remittance to my family in Mexico. Okay, let's talk about it. And that's what makes it click for people, because one, you're a trusted person, they probably know you already. And two, you're talking about something that they actually care about, like that's the real power right there.
And the thing is too is like Bitcoin is incredibly complicated. Like technically, it's complicated. It intersects with all these different things around the world, and it's like you actually don't have to understand all of those things to value it. Like you could just understand one thing, that it makes cross border payments really cheap and really easy, and you don't need permission, and it's guaranteed when it gets into the next block. Right? It's like it's there. It's proof, and like that alone is enough to be like, okay, well, that's really valuable. I now have a value for it. um so yeah, it just, yeah, exactly, start where people are and teach them about the thing that you think would be important to them. That's always my orange pilling rules. um just we're coming up to an hour here, so I just wanted to ask you one last question. I think Bitcoin, I think we're kind of coming into a space here where layer twos are becoming really important for Bitcoin. I'm just curious about your knowledge of layer twos like Lightning and Liquid and using eCash, and if you do any of that, and if you have any expertise or any insights on layer twos for Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I really don't. I use Lightning all the time to like pay people. Like we go out to eat. I'm the guy, and like this is just the way that I try to integrate Bitcoin as much as I can into my life because you have to kind of practice what you preach. If we go out to eat, I don't want anyone covering my bill if they won't accept Satoshis. You know what I mean? Hey, like you guys have Cash App. I can pay you back in Bitcoin. If you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. Just let me pay my section of the bill. Totally cool. Is that kind of annoying? Some people might think so. Sure, whatever. But I can tell you right now, I've given someone $35 for something and it's worth more now. Okay. So they look at that and they're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And that's what leads them down their rabbit hole. So it's like, can I actually utilize this thing that I want to be the future of money? Or am I just going to talk, talk, talk all day? So when it comes to layer twos, I use Lightning. Yes. Liquid, I think it's very interesting. I do have the Aqua wallet. I've used it before. Pretty cool, but I haven't really utilized it. And Aqua wallet is, if you don't know, it's like pretty sure Samson Mao, his company Jan3, ended up developing that. And you can use Liquid Bitcoin. You can use Lightning on that app. It's pretty cool. But for the most part, I'm just using Strike and I'm just sending money whenever I can. Cash App, sending money through Lightning whenever I can. That's just what I like to do. And even though I'm not really a big Coinbase supporter, they at least have Lightning. If someone has Coinbase, I'm like, here, let me show you how you can use Bitcoin to send money to people. And then I show them. So that's really all I know. And that's part of why I think everyone has their mission in life, their role in life, their role in the Bitcoin network. My role personally, I find it to be educating people around my age that, hey, this is how we can retire, this is how we can do this, how we can do that. I'm not really a coder. The people who like to code, who like computer science, their mission in Bitcoin is maybe to look at layer twos and all that other stuff. Not saying that I cannot do that, but as of right now, that's not my mission. And I maybe need to educate myself a little bit more. But I don't know too much besides Lightning and Liquid.
Well, that's awesome though. You're using lightning in such a unique way actually of just like kind of forcing your friends or to like use it. I think that's a great use case actually. That orange pilling effect it can have is kind of like a nice little byproduct of that layer two, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And again, most people already have Cash App downloaded. So like that's an easy layup. Be like, hey, look, let me show you something. So that's cool. And I think more apps are going to start to integrate that. Apple Pay is going to integrate that. Venmo is going to integrate that. PayPal integrate. You can already buy Bitcoin with those, but the integration of Lightning is what's next. And that's what drives adoption to the next level for sure.
That's a nice little point there on the future. Like the future is bright for Bitcoin. I think more adoption will happen because of these layer twos. Like it's great technology. One final last question. I know the last one was supposed to be final, but do you have what what do you think are some of the bright spots on the future for Bitcoin? What do you think is some of your predictions? Not price predictions, anything like that, but what do you see coming into the future with Bitcoin?
I think the biggest thing is going to be Bitcoin being more legitimized, right? It's already pretty legit, but all things considered, only about 2%, 3% of the whole world is using Bitcoin. That might be an overstatement. So I think as we continue to legitimize the asset, people are going to realize, wait, there might be something to this. And the trap that we need to avoid is people thinking, oh, well, I'm too late. The price exploded to 500,000. Oh, no. But you have to think, no, dude, it's about Satoshis now. Now the game's about Satoshis. Let's be real. Okay, maybe you won't get a whole Bitcoin. That's okay. You need to understand now the game is about Satoshis. And if you realize that the game is about sats, you are not too late. If you realize that fiat has no bottom, then Bitcoin has no top, which means that you are not too late. I will say this, it will be too late when you have to work to earn Bitcoins. Then it is too late. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? That will be truly the it is too late moment. When no one is accepting dollars for Bitcoin, now it is actually too late in real life. When does that happen? I don't know. Maybe 20 years, maybe 30, but that is the too late moment. So right now you live in the early moment, so you have the chance to be an early adopter even still. So that's the bright spot that I see. I see countries getting into it, companies getting into it, products being built around it, and people realizing, oh, this is just another form of money that I'm going to use side by side, maybe with my dollars until the dollars are phased out.
Yeah. It's still so crazy to me that people accept fiat for stuff. I don't know why. It's like we should all just be accepting Bitcoin. And I think you're right. We have this moment in time where we can do our own arbitrage, where we can short fiat and buy Bitcoin. And I don't mean like getting into debt necessarily, but I mean selling our fiat or swapping it for Bitcoin. And yeah, there might be a time in the future where that's not possible anymore. Nobody's willing to accept fiat for Bitcoin. Yeah, so take advantage of it, in my opinion.
That'll be a bittersweet day for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So I see that you have ego test written on your blackboard back there.
I don't know if you can see that, but
Ego test. Yeah. So what is that? I'm assuming that's got to do with humbling oneself, maybe to take a deeper look at Bitcoin, or yeah. What does that mean to you?
yeah, so my most recent video was, Bitcoin is an ego test, right? And I don't know if you like watching anime, but my thumbnail is a picture of Vegeta from Dragon Ball, right? Because that man has the biggest ego, maybe in the universe, you know. And the whole point is that like Bitcoin really calls on you to take a step back. And typically, most people they think of it, oh man, it's fake internet money, it's a scam, whatever, whatever. The price goes up, more adoption starts happening, companies start using it, countries start using it, all these things start happening, and you're like, this is this is a little bit interesting. You know what I mean? I don't understand how this is a global scam, you know? Now the idea of a global scam doesn't really make sense. So now you have to question yourself. And that's where you kind of check your ego, right? So you have to, because at first I used to just say, oh, Bitcoin is an intelligence test. Like if you don't own any, you're just stupid, and some people might think that, but it's really a test of your ego. For me, there was no ego involved when it came to Bitcoin. I just saw that the numbers going up. I never thought Bitcoin was fake or like a scam or something. Maybe that's just because I'm a younger person. But most people just see it as a pyramid or a Ponzi, and part of that is having to check maybe there might be something else going on here, right? And being able to tell yourself that you were wrong or that you were duped or that you were tricked, that's a test of the ego, right? Because the ego's greatest power is to preserve itself. And in order to do that, you cannot question yourself. You cannot question your character or your choices. That's a test of your ego.
Okay, so where can people find you? We mentioned your YouTube channel. That is Gen Z BTC. Anywhere else that you want to direct the viewers and listeners?
Yeah, Gen Z BTC on X. All right, Gen Z BTC on YouTube, and I'm going to get on Noster very soon, just in case I ever get my accounts deleted. For spreading the sound money gospel. You know what I mean? So as of right now, just X and YouTube. And if you guys stop by, if you like anime, especially, I try to integrate anime and other memes into my content as best I can. And I got a lot of funny, silly, goofy, but entertaining and informational stuff coming up. So I'd love to see you guys over there.
Nice. And I recommend checking out your MKHB or whatever MKBHD video. I was laughing from that. That was hilarious.
I'm glad you enjoyed, dude. I try to be nice, I really do, but sometimes you gotta lay it on some people, man. They just talk so arrogantly about Bitcoin, but they don't do any research. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. No, it's good humor. It's good to have humor. It's a good way to convey a story. All right. Well, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your time today, and thanks for being on the podcast.
thank you for having me. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.